Okay, hello. This is another of our Anything app meetings. The primary topic today will be PhotoSite targets and belief systems. And it's my opinion that belief systems are extraordinarily important in obtaining precognitive information, as we of course do an app using ARV or other side techniques. And then after I finish, we'll open the floor for any other questions or comments. Now, as you'll see, this is really all about information. And so I really wanted to start with this simple definition of information, which is simply here knowledge that you get about someone or something, facts or details about a subject. So it's information which is kind of non-physical, right? So it's the non-physical aspect about some subject, thing, etc. So the information itself, and understanding the distinction between information about even a physical object, the description of it, that's information. The physical object is a separate thing from the information about it. Obviously, they are linked and entangled. Now, what's a site? I want us to understand when I use the word site, that's a place where something such as a building is, was, or will be located. So we're talking about a physical, actual physical site when I use the word PhotoSite. Now, a PhotoSite is the primary verifiable information. Remember this, so this is the word information, verifiable from the photo. So, for example, whatever your physical senses could detect at that site, that would be information about the site. So your consciousness imagines it's right there, and what information could it pick up? But there are also information which includes things like ideas and emotions, and we'll make that plain in a moment. But PhotoSites, the photo is like an instant, but there could be action there which is obvious if a person is jumping or doing some sports activity. Even though it is a snapshot, you can get lots of information from this two-dimensional snapshot. And it's all that information that is involved in the PhotoSite, and what we are particularly interested in precognition when we use PhotoSites as targets is the verifiable information. Now, the senses, anything you could pick up from your senses, your consciousness basically moves to that site and can pick up all kinds of information, the standard. The site can have lots of activity, all kinds of different things might be going on at the site. You could pick up emotions. And I like this one because some people will tell us that PhotoSites, they're just too boring. Well, you know what? You can pick that up as well.
Absolutely.
And one other thing which I want to, and then the normal things which we think of, and in fact, most of the PhotoSites are always at locations. We try to make them interesting locations, but there certainly might be activity going on there or not. and that's up to you as the precogger to pick up that information and put it in your transcript. Now, I do want to point out here, there really are two kinds of emotions. There's the emotions evident at the PhotoSite. I mean, if a person is really, really happy, has a big smile on their face, that's one kind of emotion, for example. But there's another kind of emotion, which is the emotion of the viewer. And the kind of emotions which I'm primarily interested in are the ones at remote viewing time and at the feedback session. Those have a different flavor, and especially during the feedback session where we're learning more and more about these. It might be very beneficial, for example, to purposely put a very happy, positive emotion in at the feedback session to make it easier to see at the remote viewing session. That's still very much a hypothesis, but it makes a lot of sense, and it gets into this idea of belief systems, as I'll discuss more. During the judging session, whether you're an independent judge or not, we at least believe keeping the emotions, the personal emotions of the judge down to a minimum is the right place to be neutral. The analysis and judging is primarily, but not entirely, but primarily an intellectual process. Okay, so the Precog ARV Target is all about information. That's what you put on your transcript. But just like in archery, where the archer uses a bow and arrow with the intention of hitting a bullseye on a physical target, in ARV there must be, and there always is, an information target. The information target is one which is provided as feedback, and this feedback provides the basis for measurement and learning. Just like here, you get to look, did you hit a bullseye or didn't you? This is a very important part of the teaching process when we're talking about things like archery in any sport. That turns out to be a very important part of the learning process. And the same goes true for when our targets, as they are most often now in app, but other people use other kinds of targets. In fact, we have one group in app now that are using emotions, for example, as targets. But when they're PhotoSites, then the shape, sounds, taste, colors, textures, emotions, activity, concepts, etc., those are the information that can be verified. So, I'm repeating myself on purpose, because getting this deep in yourself and just taking it for granted now and understanding these basic concepts are very important. These need to be really like the ABCs. Okay, and then just like in archery, you may hit a bullseye, you may get close, and sometimes you miss the target entirely. You hear stories about people who hit a neighboring target. Displacement even occurs in archery when you're a beginner. Okay, so let's move on. Now, I want to bring science in here to make a couple of points. We're about to get more and more into belief systems now. Okay, so now I think you understand what a PhotoSite target is. It's the information, right, contained at a particular site, and that can be verified to be a PhotoSite. Now, what you believe about that what you believe makes a good one, makes a bad one, very much can affect how well you do. Science is based in many ways on updating its belief systems, right? The obvious examples are many thought the earth was flat for obvious reasons. That's what you picked up, and it certainly looks flat. Many believed for a long time, and this was just hundreds of years ago, that the earth was fixed, was stationary in the middle of the universe, and all of those little white dots out there, the stars, circled around the earth. And that again seemed pretty obvious. Um, uh, Seemed pretty obvious because you could see the stars going around. But then there were these other little funny things that were going on which got you to question your belief. And science, in the best tradition, looked at those planets and came up with a more expanding model. Now they're asking this question right now. There's a lot of activity in this theory of everything. And it's interesting. They're saying, is the final theory of everything even possible? In other words, maybe it goes on forever and there's more and more and more to learn. Who knows? I certainly believe they're not even close until they try to consider consciousness, which is certainly part of reality, and most of them are not even talking about that. But the big thing with science is updating your beliefs. And that's a really good idea, and that's one for all of us to get into too. We need to be able to update our beliefs ourselves. This is a self-correcting kind of process. In science, it's sort of institutional. In what we're talking about, it needs to be very personal. Now, we all know that many scientists believe that precognition is impossible. And that viewers can't make money consistently using Psi, and that self-judging does not work. Well, I'm just putting out here that one of the things that we're doing, and just doing it naturally by being in the middle of it, is we're showing that indeed money can be made. We know precognition. By now, we've all seen enough examples that in our minds there's no issue about is precognition possible. That's why we're into applied precognition. And indeed, there are partnerships out there now which are making money over a reasonably long period of time. And we just hope this goes on and on and on, and will go on and on and on. And ultimately, we think more and more scientists will in fact become believers and change their belief systems. And in fact, we're seeing more and more of that now. There are already scientific, I meant to get a slide of that, but there's retrocausality scientific meetings. Retrocausality is another word for precognition, but it has a perspective of the future affecting the past, which I like. That's great. Precognition certainly involves that. Now, one of the beliefs that a lot of scientists have, and I'll tell you, it's hard sometimes for scientists to change their belief system, or all people really, but a lot of scientists believe you can't get people, and it's just not true. Some viewers get people, fine, thank you. I mean, here's an example, and you can see clearly people there. Here's a sketch of the person. Not only did they get the person, got it smiling, picked up the emotion. Some people are even claiming you should just do the photo, and if that's what they want to do, fine. But look here, the photo is a two-dimensional thing. If you don't say that you could pick up other information from the photo, things like a perspective, you're just missing information. And so that's why we call these things PhotoSites, to emphasize they're all about all the kind of textures of information that you can pick up, including texture. Okay, here's the same one again, picking up a person, picking up, sure, all the great things about the building. I mean, you look how good this is, getting all the geometry, arching. It just goes on how good precognition indeed could be. Other examples, with activity, but here picking up, and they don't get it perfectly. That's what always throws some people off. Sometimes when you say you believe in precognition, they believe it's perfect. Now those of us that are in the middle of it recognize that getting this kind of information is terrific, but it's not perfect. And we learn how to live with that. And we must learn how to live with that. In the future, people may start getting better and better at it. But certainly in ARV, and that's one of the reasons we do ARV, because we don't have to be perfect, we just need to distinguish between two photos, two photo sites. Here's another example. Some people can not only pick up people, but animals and fish. There are some out there who say about themselves, I never can get animals. Some say I never can get people. I never can get this. I never can get that. And somehow they believe that. Well, this is where the belief system thing comes in. You need to be able to look at your belief system and be able to modify it. It's not that you can't do it. You haven't done it perhaps up until now. But one of the things, if you're going to do it, is going to be to change your belief system about that. Okay, so here we obviously get the people, the person, but you're also picking up this shark. I mean, this is just marvelous. Okay, and here's another person doing the same thing. Now here's an interesting one. Two people who did a good job in picking up the structure did not pick up the people. And that indeed happens for one reason or another pretty often. These may be the people who say, oh, well, this one did get life form. This one got life form. This one did not. They certainly didn't pick up anything about being on the moon, but again, they're not perfect. The communication channel is indeed not perfect, but it's certainly darn good. Now here, again, some people don't do PhotoSites, but what I wanted to show here was something so interesting about the communication channel. Here's one where you would hope they'd pick up a sound, they'd pick up maybe even a little bit of motion, stress or whatever. The one viewer that got this the best, all they got was a circle that moves. I just thought that was so funny. And this was a hit. I mean, this was the circle that moved. And so this communication channel is just sort of a marvelous reality. And it's one to be, I want to say worked, but it's more than that. To be cultivated, to be loved. It's you. It's your communication channel. To be worked with and improved. It's learning a language of information transfer. The PhotoSites are all about information, and look what got transferred this time, and not more. Now, why not work on getting more? But you need to work on your belief system. How much more do you think you can get? A lot of people would believe this is an absolute terrible target. Boring, I mean, come on, a fire hydrant. And yet here was a person who missed some stuff. I mean, moving back and forth, wavering, none of that is true. However, look at this sketch here. And they called out a fire hydrant. And they called out a red fire hydrant. I mean, you can really learn so much about this communication channel because you can tell they in fact picked up the information from the feedback target, transmitted to the remote viewing session, got fire hydrant, but also then made the entanglement with red, which you can understand, and even water, which you can understand. There wasn't any water flow in there, but certainly fire hydrants and water have an awful lot in common. And so you begin to understand how this communication channel works. How about this one? Do you think this is a good target or not? Here we just have static, interesting geometry, and I happen to actually think geometries are good, but a lot of other people don't. Anyway, this person got that very nice serpentine, water, uniform landscape, vivid blue, blue sky. There's no sky here, but imposing very tall trees. What about this? Quiet people. This person didn't get people, didn't even get the water, but got the basin. Now my point here in terms of PhotoSites is we do not really know what makes a good PhotoSite, what makes a bad PhotoSite. We have a lot of hypotheses. We have, and have had in the past, targeting groups that would disagree, and yet we went ahead doing the best we could based on that disagreement. We now have data and are actually looking. We're actually looking at our data to see if some types of sites do much better than others. And I'll tell you that I really had an expectation and a belief that we would pretty quickly see, for example, in my case, I happen to believe that activity would be really important. And yet there have been so many static sites that have done beautifully. Other people came in with different sort of beliefs about what would make a good site. And one of the guys on our team, Stephen, said he was just surprised because every time he found a example of one kind of site that he thought, would do well and did do well, he could find as many examples of sort of the opposite. So we still do not know what makes a, quote, good site. What I'm coming to believe is that a much better attitude is remote viewers can see and view anything. And yes, we want to make it as easy as possible for them. And that may be what we're looking for, is to make it easier for most viewers. But at the same time, we really need to teach them to get better and better, because what's good for one at the level of easy or moderate may be different for another. And all of them ought to just work to get better and better, because it's pretty clear that the best viewers can see virtually any target. Ingo Swann saw the differences between two types of graph paper. Now that's boring. Just another example of how this communication channel works between the PhotoSites, and that you should just leave your belief systems wide open and not worry about whether you can do people. Did they get people here? Something is watching, looking, observing. They really got the information. In fact, in this case, they got the key information. You know, they didn't really draw faces. Yes, you've got things that look like eyes here. Maybe this is a nose or a lip. I don't really know. Well, here, clearly the eyes. But the key information here is looking and observing. That is the information in this site that I think is the major gestalt. Now, what would you think here? Terrible site, a lot of people would say. Totally static. This is a mountain, nothing going on, really boring. And look what information someone got from here. First of all, you look at this. So they did, in fact, pick up, I think, very nicely this. Picked up maybe the mountains, but the primary thing they picked up, which was so interesting, is cold, damp, very cold. It's like a cave. I think somewhere in here they might even say cave, but it certainly looks like a cave. And so they went way back here where there might be a cave, and that's what they described. And there probably is a cave in there. If not, you can certainly imagine that there was. Oh, I wanted to make it bigger to see if there was a cave there. Anyway, you get the point. The information that they picked up was not perfect, but you could certainly understand how they got it from here. And you can understand how the communication channel, which is not perfect, and it involves other things inside the psyche, would give something like this. Okay, now, a lot of people believe they need to do sketches. A lot of people come here and say, I won't really be good at this because I can't do sketches at all. I'm a terrible artist, but I don't even get visual images. Well, here's a person, no drawings at all. All that came up were words. Now, what are words? Words are concepts. Words are ideas. Okay? And there was enough here that this was ranked very high, as it should have been. Wood, trough, ship, shore, and water. I don't see a shore, but you know, these things are probably not far from the shore, but certainly ship and water. Large machinery, probably not. Large area of green, large area of yellow, no. How about natives? Pick up natives. That's pretty amazing. And a tower, I would say this, you know, the main, God, I can't believe I forgot what that's called, but there's, you know, a main thing is mast. The big mast is certainly like a tower. Something tall, narrow, and girdle-like. People singing. And this probably is in some place like Hawaii, and they may very well be singing. They're certainly not attacking this ship. Water in motion, yes. And yet they got the soldiers. I guess that was another interpretation of this. Interesting. Guards and prisoners, a ship, jagged rocks, pools of water. I think you would agree this is a very good match, no sketch. Just showing that belief systems that people have just need to be broadened so that you have no don'ts. Your communication channel, how limited do you think it is? Is it limited at all? The people at the Monroe Institute basically say the only limitations are the ones we put on ourselves. And I think that's about right. And your belief systems where all these limitations indeed are. Do you think your subconscious could even have a sense of humor? Does it make sense to think about that? Look at this sketch here, this target here, this PhotoSite target here. Okay, it's, you know, yeah, you'd have to say maybe it's, well, there it is. Let me show you what one viewer did with that target. got a lot of other stuff here, and you can see the sketch is great. Put seat up here, even though the seat was there. I love it because, you just communicate. Whatever comes in, comes in. But I want to read this to you. People visit again and again, boasting how many times they've been, as though this is an achievement. You got to admit that's funny. Okay? I mean, that's funny. So, there's a lot more to this communication between the consciousness, the conscious mind, that experiences moment to moment, and then this deeper, higher, whatever you want to call it, subconscious mind. I now want to go through and make one other point, which is so clear and that you should just all accept in your belief system. You're going to get information in different ways, and that you, in fact, can just nail targets in different ways. I mean, look what this person did. Got the cliff, got this jagged stuff, which is here. Didn't get it perfectly, but look at the elements picked up. Valley of Rift. Here's the same one. All words. This one, there was a hairy taste. I love this. You get this kind of stuff, the way it communicates. And they did exactly the right thing. They just receive the information. When you're in your remote viewing mode, you are the receiver. You're receiving the information and you just put it down. Outdoorsy, severe vertical shapes, did a very good job. Just words, dark colored humanoid. What can you say? That's just wonderful. Okay, this one I like because it emphasizes all the other senses. This says sound of fabric flapping in the wind, and got white, certainly got a person shaped here, high tent, beige, but it's the sound. All the senses are available to you through this communication channel, of course. I mean, hey, I think we understand there's something deep going on, but the subconscious uses your nervous system with all of your senses to communicate to your conscious mind. Here, thought this might have been a vehicle, a helicopter, got the water spiraling downward, concave. Notice everybody is getting a little different take on it, but I think you would agree that all of these people had their consciousness go to this feedback PhotoSite, sent their consciousness here to the photo site, this actual site at the time the photo was taken, and is giving back as best they can. They're communicating information. And then here's one, and yeah, they mix. Here are all these jagged things, which are so interesting that so many of them pick that up, but they put it on the person. But again, you get the feeling of sound, the flapping, and you can see, that there's sound there. Persons, and in fact, there's a second person right there. Okay, I think this was my last one. Some might consider this to be too busy. There's too much going on. Buildings, bicycles, stuff, all kinds of stuff like that. And yet they just did a good job. Yeah, you're picking up the blockiness both here and here. They got a lot of the colors. There are just lots of colors here. Picked up path, wall. I think that might say plaster, but I'm not sure. Obviously structure, green, a pathway. The subconscious can describe the information in virtually any photo site. Now, this gets to the issue of negative belief systems, people taking and telling you, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. and this is, don't take no for an answer. I am thankful to all those who said no to me. It's because of them I did it myself. And this gets to the very important point of taking responsibility for paying attention to your beliefs. And ARV is just a perfect place to see them come up. But pay attention to your beliefs and then work on modifying them. So intend to pay attention. This intention, attention, expectation. Intend to pay attention to them. Expect to be paying attention to them all along during all the phases of ARV. Do pay attention and expect to modify them in a way which will improve you, give you better hit rates. Okay, I guess I put this one after. Some people say, hey, this is an accident. I don't think you should put those in there because it's so negative. But this person did a great job.
That's a great target.
Yeah, right. And you think it is, but other people would think it isn't, because there might be one to be avoided. And you know what? If that person has that belief system, they might indeed avoid it. But obviously we want to build a belief system, build a mindset which is broad, which is open to describing and sketching any PhotoSite, describing and sketching any target. As we get more mature at this, you want to do that. And part of that for some people may be to get into a place where they realize that they're an observer. You weren't involved in that accident. Okay. Now here's the mindset. Mindset is just such an important part of this, because the mindset is in some ways a collection of all of your beliefs. Now that isn't how they said it here. That's how I said it. Here the definition is a fixed, and I love the word fixed because I would like to think that my mindset and your mindset are not quite fixed. But here it is, a fixed mental attitude or disposition that predetermines a person's response to and interpretations of situations. So that is about the strongest definition of mindset that you can have. And the unreasonable skeptics, for example, about precognition would have that kind of mindset. No matter what you told them, they know precognition can't be real. Their mindset is so rigid. And there's some skeptics like that. I'd like to think most skeptics are not like that, but we do know there are some skeptics that are like that. And they might be like that because they think it's the work of the devil or stuff like that. And so it's impossible. But that's their mindset. The second definition is, I think, is softer and closer to what I think most of us have in terms of our mindsets about precognition. And that is an inclination or a habit. You might be inclined to believe, and it's been a habit that you've missed getting people, or you can't do colors or whatever, and that's sort of the way your mindset is. Period. Beliefs have all kinds of subtleties to them, and there are many, many, many beliefs, some of which are contradictory to each other, and yet somehow we're able to carry those in ourselves. Okay, so when we talk about hits, misses, and passes, what happens in there is so important in our belief system. and I do want to talk about it, but let's not talk about it now. I can see I have this here. At one time I thought this would be a good place to talk about it, because we just have to accept that we have negative beliefs about things, like misses. You feel like misses are bad and you get all upset when you have misses. Okay, let's more formally now talk about belief systems in terms of what a lot of other people have said about them. I've sort of integrated a lot of what I believe about belief systems. But this is a very interesting one, which I believe has a lot of truth. We want to get at this stuff from different angles. A belief is not merely an idea that the mind possesses. And I think that is the way we usually think about beliefs, okay? It's something in the mind. But they're saying here it's not merely an idea that the mind possesses. It is an idea that possesses the mind. And there's a lot of truth to that, because our beliefs are what lead us to do our behavior, right? If you believe something's going to hurt you, and that doesn't mean this is a bad thing, it's just a reality. For example, if you believe that something is going to hurt you, hey, avoid it, right? Nothing wrong with that. But if you believe that you can't do precognition, well, you won't even join app perhaps. Or if you believe it might be possible but that I can't do it, do you think that puts you in the best position to do it well or not? So notice it's almost like a double belief system there that will affect your behavior and I believe your results. You talk to a Joe McMonagle, and do you think he believes that he can describe the next remote viewing target he's given, whether it's present or future? He just knows it. It's just built into his belief system. And that, of course, affects his behavior. He just goes ahead and does it. And I think it's pretty clear that that's what needs to be developed, this high level of conscious knowing, as close to knowing as you can get, to the point where you just know this precognition is real and that you can do it, and that with a high probability you're going to get a good hit this next time around. Now, we always know beliefs has this connection somehow to truth. You'd like to believe that what you believe is indeed the truth, and that from this and from things like a scientific approach and seeing your own direct experiences, from this you do get knowledge. But there's this area where maybe you're not quite sure. You have a belief about something and maybe you're taking it on faith. Okay, at least I think you ought to appreciate and understand that that's the level of your belief. Looking at your beliefs is such an important endeavor, and I think that's one of the really big benefits of ARV, because you really have an opportunity to do that. So okay, so there are truths out there that you might have no beliefs about. Okay, we all know there are these big level belief systems. Some of them are in the religious world, and I think that's where this issue of the beliefs about faith come in. There's so many religions that believe so many things, and indeed many of which are contradictory, and maybe one of them are right, but a lot of people on faith believe they're right. I think we could say that safely. And just knowing that, that's terrific, that you're taking it on faith. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But being self-aware of it, I think, is important. And some of these are just worldviews, not saying much about the universe, not saying much about what you would call, what some religions would call godlike, things like that, more philosophies of life, of the universe, of truth, that sort of thing. So they're out there. And guess what? When we grow up, we're getting our belief systems as children when we grow up from our parents, from direct experience, and some of them may be true and some of them may not be true. What's truth? Okay, here's a definition. The real facts about something. Now, how do you know what the real facts about those are? The things that are true. It seemed a little circular to me. The quality or state of being true. But the last one, I think, is really the one that nails it, at least certainly for us. A statement or idea that is true or accepted as true. So I think, and now I'm going to give you my own level of what truth and knowing is all about. I believe the only thing I know for 100% sure, the thing which I know better than anything else, is my now conscious moment. That for me is a truth point. Right now, that's true. I'm sitting here, I'm talking, I'm looking at a screen, I'm seeing circles and different colors, I'm looking at the word truth, but that's my now conscious moment. I have a vague memory of the slides that went before, but I don't know for sure that I could describe those exactly. I can go back and look, but those would be other now moments. So this idea of accepted as true, I think, is so key, and getting as close as you can to truth. And in ARV, and I think most of you have heard me say that, at the feedback time, we take the perspective, because in fact it's true, that you are seeing your target and you are consciously seeing that target in that moment, and it is the truth about that target because it's in your very nice now conscious moment. What is so amazing about retrocausality when I'm at my feedback time is I can actually cause things to happen earlier in time during my remote viewing session. So retrocausality gives that perspective to precognition. At the remote viewing time, I'm picking up information from the feedback session when I knew the truth. So you hear me, and more over the years, I'm seeing that precognition and virtually all psi phenomenon, and I'll say that, virtually all psi phenomenon are about this communication channel between the conscious and subconscious mind. Now, the conscious mind, I know that's the thing that's experiencing this now. That's my conscious mind. I'm experiencing it with all my senses, my nervous system, whatever it is. I have a direct experience of that I know. I consider that to be the most fundamental thing, frankly, in the universe. The conscious moments are almost like the atom of in the old Plato sense of the universe. So it's the conscious now moments. Okay. The subconscious mind, that's, hey, what I'm exploring and what you're exploring. It's got a lot of different words, but a lot of different people use different words for it. But I think that really all of them are grappling with the same thing, which is something bigger than the ego self, bigger than just the entity in the physical world that's experiencing consciousness. Okay, I mean, I'm in this physical world and I'm experiencing consciousness now. I don't think my subconscious mind is in the physical world. It interacts with the physical world and me, and that's the communication channel. I mean, that's really cool. That's really cool. So I give, and so I don't object to this word, the power of your subconscious mind. When I have one of these really great precog sessions, that's not coming from the I that I usually think of as my day-to-day self. Okay, there's something bigger out there. You hear all these stories of macro PK. That's not your normal self doing that. You know, macro PK is controversial, but there's a lot of evidence for incidents happening where micro PK was real. That's not the normal self. So, in fact, all of real psi phenomenon, I think, come from this communication channel. It comes from the power of this, what we're calling subconscious mind. Now here's something from Anthony Robbins that I think helps connect all of this together. What we can or cannot do, what we consider possible or impossible, is rarely a function of our true capability. Okay? It is more like a function of our beliefs about who we are, about our beliefs about what our capabilities are. And again, God, imagine the people who get to a point where they really believe, and they've gotten rid of all the other beliefs that might contradict it, that they are, I don't know how to say it without sounding too obnoxious, but essentially infinite. I'll just say it that way. That they can do anything. Well past precognition. And you hear about people like that from time to time. And they're usually very, very quiet. But we all hear these. When I was a kid, and one of the things I got interested in all this, you'd hear about these miracle stories. And you never would know if they're true or not. Because, you weren't there. And there's somebody else. It's always second or third hand. But you know what? Precognition is a miracle story to a lot of people. And it just makes sense that you are much grander and much greater than you think you are. And I think that's true no matter where you are. And I like that mindset. I believe that's a very powerful mindset, that you can just continue to do more and more, and that you are essentially not limited by anything but your own beliefs.
Can I comment on that, Marty?
Sure.
Yeah, so you're talking about limited beliefs. That's actually well known in the hard science of biology at this point. There's you have what's called the placebo effect. Everybody's familiar with that, where you have something positive happen based on your belief, whether it be healing. And they've actually documented thousands of cases of terminal illness being healed, not just a common cold, but something very significant. And on the other side of that, you have what's called limiting beliefs, and the biological term for that is nocebo. And if you believe that nothing's going to happen, or some situation is going to get worse, it actually tends to happen at the same rate as the placebo effect. And these are scientific facts. It's not even speculation. We have measurements available for these things. So, you know, applying this to precognitive abilities or other mental aspects, it seems pretty congruent. It's not really a stretch of the imagination at all.
Okay, and that's terrific. And then once people get that, then the challenge is to do it for themselves. In other words, you get to the point, believe you can, and you're halfway there. Teddy Roosevelt. I have the belief that I can do it. I shall surely acquire the capacity to do it, even if I may not have it at the beginning. Okay, so that's getting to, I can do any target. I can get into any feedback and retrocausal it back to my target. That's me. I'm doing it. I believe that. And so, you know, science has shown it at kind of the intellectual level. Now the challenge for all of us is to make it so real that we keep getting better and better at our precognition. You know, dream it, believe it, achieve it. It might be in an ARV context, I can give a good description of any ARV target. Okay? I'm trying to get practical now in terms of the level of working on a belief. And when you get, see, what's so beautiful about this is when you get a miss, you get to look at that belief and see if there were contradictory beliefs around, why it didn't happen, come from a place which says, if I really believed that deep enough, I would have described that target better, and ask your subconscious why it didn't. In other words, come from that very positive place. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. All of that kind of stuff. You may not have it at the beginning, but I can surely acquire the capacity to do it. So it's this attitude that I'm hoping people will go away with in this talk and bring it into their own lives. Another one, and this is kind of a practical one, which allows you to know you're on a journey, and you may not even want to get to the 100% place. I like having one foot in the physical world and one foot in what I call the spiritual world, the non-physical world. Maybe a belief like this, and I've actually stated this as being achievable for many, many remote viewers. I can achieve and maintain an 80% hit rate. Now, as you know, we keep records. We keep personal records. You can watch this. You can work to build it. Okay? Surely acquire the capacity to do it. Is that a belief that you have, or do you think, nah, I'm not good enough? Yeah, I might get to 55%, but I'm never going to get to 80%. Take a look at your belief system on that. What do you really believe you can achieve? And why not modify that belief and go for the gold, the cigar, you know, whatever. In fact, maybe 80% isn't even the goal. Just go for 80%. Sure, there might be somebody else who wants to go for 90%. More power to them. But I can achieve and maintain. This is a rather specific belief system which you can build even though you haven't acquired it yet. Now, in precognition in general, and ARV, of course, is the application we're focused on now, but it in fact will spill over into the rest of your life. And this is a belief. I can transfer my communication skills, and of course I mean communication skills with the subconscious, my communication skills to other aspects of my life. In other words, you don't have to only use it for ARV. You know, we hear all kinds of stories of people who, Russ Targ tells one that saved his life with his motorcycle. He was on a rock was coming around the corner, and he sensed it, and he changed his trajectory to avoid the rock, the boulder, that was actually indeed there. Okay, and then responsibility for beliefs. I'm going to stop here because I think this is so important. If you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, let's say most of your misses, you wouldn't sit for a month, right? Your butt would be so sore. And the point there is, if who's responsible for what's going on in your precog life? Who's responsible for what's going on in the communication channel between you and your subconscious? It's you. It's you. Okay, with that I will stop. And God, I can't believe I went for an hour. But please, questions, comments?
Marty, Glenn and I think, well, I don't know if Nancy's still here, but Nancy had questions in the chat, and then
Okay,
yeah, I see Julie's here from her email earlier.
Oh, okay, good. So let me open that up. Did Julie ask a question in the chat box? Because I wouldn't mind answering that one first because it fits in.
Well, she had the email question.
Yeah, okay. I don't know how much of this you heard, Julie, but your question involved the fact that you gave a good description of the wrong target. So you had a miss. That's called displacement. Now, in the context of belief systems, there are a few things that come out of that. The first thing, in my opinion, that you should believe is actually a very, very positive thing. Hey, you're psychic. Julie, you managed to get a good description of something before you saw it. However, in ARV, you described what was associated with the other coordinate. You didn't describe the target associated with the coordinate you were given. So that's not so good. That's a miss. The good thing is, if you can now carry a belief which says, I'm going to learn something from that. Did you learn anything from that miss? Plus, over the long term, I'm going to get better and better at this, and I'm going to be describing the other target less and less, and my focus is going to be totally on the target that is associated with the coordinate. So Julie,
well, okay, but my basic question is, without having seen the outcome, I have two coordinates. So I see one really clearly, and I describe it as, let's say, A. And then I see B for that coordinate less clearly. Then I go down to the second set of coordinates, and it's the other way. I see A less clearly and B more clearly. But I feel like I got a real good hit on the first coordinate A. And then my feedback comes back immediately that instead of my strong sense that I felt, that I actually, well, let's see, I have it here. Okay, so I won't read it exactly the way it is because I don't want to mar anybody else's thing from this week, but basically my prediction was the opposite from the side that I felt the strongest on.
Correct.
So
that's called displacement. You have just given, maybe even better than I gave, the definition of displacement. Your subconscious, what you demonstrated and what you should definitely believe as being true now because you've experienced it firsthand, is that your subconscious has access to both pictures at remote viewing time.
Right.
You
But
get,
wouldn't it just be my personal judgment that would skew that?
well, but I'm
Uh,
assuming you judged it properly, that you gave, it sounds like you gave one of the pictures, because it was a really good match, a high score.
right.
And it,
But
and,
then, but
but
the
the,
one I gave the high score to did not end up being my prediction. That's where I'm confused.
no, that's called a miss. That's called displacement. And one of the things you're going to learn by doing this over and over again is to get over that and tell your subconscious, hey, subconscious, um, here's an
Well,
example of conversation. Hey,
well,
subconscious, I know you're psychic. You gave me a good description, but how come you didn't give it with the right coordinate that I saw at feedback time?
but I don't have the ultimate result yet. This is for this week's
Oh,
week. I
then,
don't know
oh,
whether it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is, it
oh.
feels like it should be one, but it's the other. That's what I'm not
Why
understanding
do
the
you say it's
math.
the other? No. Oh,
Well,
oh,
okay,
wait, I misunderstood. If you said
okay,
that one coordinate did a really good job in matching PhotoSite A, and the other
uh-huh.
coordinate did a really good job of matching PhotoSite B, that's perfect. There's no reason you should, if you haven't seen the outcome yet, you have a very strong confirming prediction. That's how
But
it's,
it doesn't match up with the coordinate that I saw very strongly.
the
That's where
second
I'm
one doesn't.
confused.
No, wait, your first coordinate is only supposed to match up with one of the two targets.
Right.
Your second
And
coordinate
then,
is only supposed to match up with one of the two targets, but it's actually best if it matches up with the other target. Because one has,
right. And
isn't that what
so,
you did?
so my question is, when you see, like, say I have a 0, 3, a 5, and a 2, do you add those columns up and get
Ah,
or do you just go with the highest
the system,
hit?
the system takes the highest number. So if you did that 0, 3, 5 example, the 5 would be the determining factor for your prediction by the system. But when people get high numbers like that, I often look at their transcripts and stuff like that to see if it's right. But
I see. So,
it would just use the
okay.
highest one. But if you did
Because this
0,
one, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if you did 0, 3.5, 5, and 0, that would be even stronger because that's confirming you would be willing to wager on both of those coordinates, and they're on the different pictures.
Okay. Well, it looks backwards to me.
Why does it look
Um,
backwards? I mean, this
can I read may I read the coordinates? I don't want to throw anyone off for this
everybody,
week.
you should know that everybody gets their own PhotoSite pair. So nobody
Okay,
else got
okay,
your pair.
okay. So my, okay, so I got for the first coordinate, I did a 3 and a 0.
Okay.
For the second coordinate, I had a 2 and a 4.5.
Okay. So you would predict PhotoSite, the second coordinate is going with PhotoSite B. I mean, that's
Now
terrific.
this says, so your personal prediction is side 1.
Oh, and that's because, that's what you didn't understand. The second
Yeah,
coordinate, okay, PhotoSite A is always associated with the winning side. PhotoSite B is always associated with the losing side. Your
Oh.
first coordinate had something, either over or under, but your second coordinate, whatever it is, let's say it was under, you gave a good match to PhotoSite B for under. Well, if under is the losing side, guess what the winning side is?
Mm-hmm.
Over. So you predicted over in my example.
But this says I predicted. That's what I'm not.
What did it say you predicted? Tell me what it said you predicted.
So your personal prediction is side 1 under.
Okay. Then okay. So side 1, in your case, was associated with under. Side 2 was associated with over.
Okay.
Automatically.
And my side 2, that second coordinate was the highest.
And it matched PhotoSite B, which is the losing side.
Which is under. Oh my word.
So now,
okay.
So now you got it.
Oh, I don't know if I've got it, but
I know.
I get it.
Okay. You've gone
okay.
a major step forward. Now, what's really important here is for you to believe, at least I think it's important for you to believe, you want to get it intellectually because we want to integrate the intellect with the intuitive. Next time you go into this, though, don't care at all about the fact that you do or do not understand it. That's irrelevant because your subconscious, its task has nothing to do with the understanding. Its task is just to describe and sketch.
Okay.
Okay, Julie, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now let me see. Let me go back to the top and see. Okay, Glenn, at the moment I can see images only, but I am unable to feel emotions. How do other people in the group receive this info? What tips can anyone give? Anybody here have a response to that? Do they get emotions, and how do they come in?
I typed a response to his question, but basically in our lingo it's called prompting, and what I do is actually somewhat difficult. I don't want to color your belief system, but for me it's somewhat difficult to get this data until like about the middle or later in the session, when I have some basic data already down and I have target contact. Then I start asking, even maybe page 2 of my session, I'll ask, what would I feel like if I were at the target site, or what would my emotions be if I were the photographer, or if there's a subject in the photo. I had one photo where it was a guy jet skiing and he was doing a flip. That guy is going to have elation, excitement, joy. He's a big grin on his face. So I would say, what would I feel like if I were the subject of the photo? And then usually, we're just sitting at a boring desk and describing the answers to these questions, and usually the right answer tends to be that's surprising. Why would I feel vertigo where I'm sitting at a desk? Why would I, like, if I'm afraid of heights, why would I feel like I have that weird fear of heights right now when I'm just sitting down writing a session, or feel like I'm falling, or feel like those are usually the ones that you want to pay attention to, because they tend to be right.
Do you sometimes get words as opposed to the feeling that you're sort of asking about?
Very often, more often than not, I'll ask, what would I feel, and then I'll get a word immediately that'll describe it. Sometimes I do feel it, but that's, most of the time it's just a word for me.
Okay, well but it could be either way. Glenn, that approach works in so many ways, where you start out with a session, you get information, and then the information stops or slows down, or you want to get different information. And so you do go into the conscious mind and ask a question of the subconscious. What a great skill that is. And so you might just very well try that and see if it works and develop it. I mean, I believe you can develop that. Your subconscious, wants you to do that. Okay, let's go over Nancy's question because, we'll share it with everybody. Assuming you are relatively good at tuning into the accurate elements of both photos, how do you set the intention to select the winning photo site? Do you try to get focus on the winning photo site and it will generate more accurate data than the other? Do you try to subconsciously sabotage? Oh, God, no. Oh, I wish she was there to hear the answer to Julie. She does. Okay, let me see how you answered that, John. Sabotage, absolutely not. The mental focus should be turned away from winning target. The focus should very simply be on describing the data represented by the target reference number. We call it coordinate, sometimes called target reference number only. I only want data relevant to this target number, then describe. The second coordinate, do the same. I only want data relevant to this target number. The winning losing is not even set until after you turn in your session randomly by software. So your focus should simply be on the target number data and that's it. Literally nothing else is relevant. Thank you, John. That's exactly right. We need to copy and paste that to Nancy. Do you have her email by any chance?
I don't, but I think if we click on her name, it probably comes up, right?
Yeah.
Oh, she's gone though, huh?
Yeah, she's gone, but if I can get her email. Oh, she said got it. So she was there. Very good. That was at 12:51 before she left.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look at James's. There are levels of truth. We essentially have to identify false beliefs and let them go in order to accept higher levels, to fall in love with the truth. The higher we go, the higher hit rates will be, up to 98%. I accept that. I don't know where the 98% is, but I think I think the limit is a lot higher than we're going for now. And I like your word, levels of truth. It's just so funny because most people consider truths to be absolute, but I know what you mean. There's just levels of truth, different aspects of truth, and we keep learning more and more about it. Or maybe it's higher levels of belief. That might be about truth too. Anyway, James, thank you for that comment.
I have an interesting question, if you don't mind.
Sure, of course.
So since we're talking about belief systems, I'm having trouble sort of defining how this happens. It seems to be outside of belief systems. When I pull data that's not in the target photo site, but it is clearly at the target photo site. So I'll give you an example. One of my last targets was in my opinion, a boring target, and I do terribly with boring targets and what I mean by boring is there's just limited data. So this target happened to be a picture of a fish, just a picture of a fish, and you couldn't even see the tank. It was just a close-up of a fish and nothing else. There was about 3 colors and 2 shapes. It was an eye shape and the shape of his mouth. And what happens in those cases in my mind, because I like to do longer sessions, it just searches and searches for data. It's like, that can't be it. We have like 3 pieces of data. What else is there? And so I gave a very detailed sketch drawing sounds and function of the filtration system of the aquarium that it was in.
That's interesting. Okay.
And I sort of whenever I do my feedback as a learning process, I like to, ask questions. Why did I come up with that? It wasn't in the photo, but it definitely was present at the thing. In this case, there was actually a description of the photo in it. And as an engineer, I know exactly how that filtration system works, and I just drew it. But that's not necessarily a belief system, right? I became bored by the limited data in the photo, and I just searched for more stuff in the surrounding area, and that's clearly not in the photo.
Yeah, I don't see that as directly related to a belief system. I do see, though, how great that was. You believe, and in fact, it does sound like a boring site, and your subconscious gave you something interesting, very related to it. I mean, I would certainly give that a reasonably high score um,
In this
because of
case,
the way it all fits together.
I actually gave it a low score because my intention was to describe what was in the photo site, and I started thing at the site, but not in the photo. That was more interesting for my mind, because I like describing I do very well with mechanical objects or things like that, and that's what I drew. And I even wrote the word water pump and drew the filtration. I drew an exact replica of that pump. It was just
Well, you see, what's
what
interesting about
picture was,
this,
you know.
what's interesting about this is this gets to belief systems about judging. You can see how different our belief systems are about how to judge that. I would have judged it high, you're judging it low. So that's the only real connection with belief systems, but that's kind of an important one in a way, because I think that you explained how your communication channel, how your subconscious responded to boredom. I think that's very cool. And because of that, that's sort of a reasonable way. As a judge, remember, it's mostly intellectual, but it includes your understanding on how the communication channel works, right? I mean, that's what you're judging, the communication channel. Uh, so anyway, but thank you for sharing that. I think that's really terrific. I like that. That's classic. Um, I'm going to
So
have,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead. I was just going to say, I'm going to have a judging one of these Anything app where we focus on judging, and please bring up that example.
Oh, nice. That was sort of my next question was how to deal with implied data, movement. Like, okay, for instance, we had that earlier in this presentation. There was a person on the was it a saxophone, and it was a circle. They drew a circle and it said moving circle.
Mm-hmm.
But in the photo, it's a stationary photo, so they were implying movement, which we caught on to because we know that guy's going to be rocking back and forth with the music. So yeah, movement, emotions, objects, things that are outside of the photo. These are all implied things. Like, we know that if there's a fish that's in an aquarium, he has to have some sort of water. He has to have air pumped into it, water, and be given food.
Right.
Those are implied. But how do we deal with those things that are not in the photo? But
That's a very good question, and we've had many arguments, and I will in fact state it that way because they actually got quite heated. I think the bottom line is it becomes very personal, and the fact that this is such a controversial issue supports, in my opinion, the idea of doing self-judging.
I totally agree with that.
A lot of people are so anti-self-judging. More and more over the years, I now encourage it for questions just like this one and for other subtleties in the session. Words are not always crisp and clear. You know, they're words that have multiple meanings. I don't know if that's true in all languages, but in English, you know, there's tons of words that can mean different things. Light just came to mind. You know, things are light, and then there's, you know, electromagnetic light, and then there's light humor. Anyway, we all understand that. Only the viewer will know exactly what the meaning was when they put that down, what the communication channel was giving them. So in fact, I'm giving a, you know, in my home, um, and I'm going to make a big point of that because I am going to get everybody to do just self-judging. Usually I give people the option, but here I'm not giving them the option. And I'll give them the option when they leave to find a judge, but I'm going to have them do self-judging the whole time because I think it'll teach them the most. So I hope I answered that. So there's no yes or no to that kind of question. It becomes very personal on what to do with stuff outside the picture and what, you know, verifiable really means. Okay, anybody else? Let's see. Glenn, yes, I will try. Let me go down further. Body feelings, try PhotoSite of Abe Lincoln versus, okay, to discern a win a wager. Well, remember the winning, yeah. I'm afraid belief systems, like you were saying there, James, are true. I can see cases where if you're not totally clear on all you want to do and leave all the other belief systems out of the way, you know, they call those set-asides in CRV, and that word makes good sense. Set aside everything else except the beliefs associated with you doing a good description of the target associated with your coordinate. So, okay. Body feelings, try PhotoSite, right? Thanks, James. You're welcome. Yes, I will try it. Good. Stomach tends to knot up with negative people. Okay. Dr. Hawkins, we can't shine darkness into a closet. This is either truth or lack of truth as the clouds over the eternal light of the sun. Okay, we're getting spiritual here a little bit, and I like that, frankly, because one of the reasons I'm in this work is I do believe the people that get it and do well at it tend to really appreciate the reality of the non-physical, of the spiritual, of the fact we're all connected and all that kind of stuff, which will make a better world. And hopefully that'll be the paradigm shift, which I believe we're a part of. And I'd like to think it could happen relatively quickly, but I don't know that. I haven't really asked that question. That would be an interesting question to ask. But, you know, when are we going to get into the consciousness paradigm shift? However, time is not easy to actually predict. Okay, other questions?
Glenn has another question at the bottom.
I am still mixing the two targets. Are there any techniques? Yes, there are, and I don't know if you heard any of my discussions on beacons. Beacons are a really, really good technique. You know, a lighthouse beacon gets you to your place from far away, right? You see the lighthouse and you say, aha, that's where I'm supposed to go. And then you can look at your map and find out where the rocks are that you're supposed to avoid and all that kind of good thing. But it guides you in. There are several kinds of beacons that you can use. I like food. That's one kind of beacon. Imagine, for example, when you're doing your first coordinate, you take a bite of a chocolate chip cookie with the intention of finishing it during the feedback session. And it would be really easy, at least for me who loves chocolate chip cookies, to feel really good about the whole process. And that would be the connection, the chocolate chip cookie. So that's a kind of a beacon, and that's one that you can nicely use. Another beacon is saying the coordinate out loud. Whenever I do sessions, I actually write it. I always write the coordinate several times, and as I'm writing it, I say it out loud, knowing I'm going to say it out loud again at feedback time. So I could actually have taken a bite of the cookie and said it out loud. Now I always say it out loud because that's so easy. And then I always say it out loud at feedback time. And notice it's not memorizing the number. I don't believe, and again this is a belief, that the specific number matters. I think when I'm saying it out loud, it's the vibration, it's the sound, how it vibrates in my body, how it's physically interacting with me, and then it's the same kind of reaction, which is unique to me, when I say it out loud at feedback time. So that's another kind of beacon. I trace the coordinate. So not only do I write it multiple times, and again, it's not the specific number, it's the feeling of the numbers. Am I going, around with a 9 versus the lines with a 4 and that sort of thing, which I then trace out again at feedback time. And then the other kind of beacon is actually a physical one. You could just arbitrarily pick up a marble, say, and hold that marble, knowing you're going to hold that marble again at feedback time. And you might even have a belief. There's a thing called psychometry, where people will hold the keys of a person and get a lot of information about the person. This is almost like precognitive psychometry. That marble, and again, if you believe this, you can help make it happen. That marble can be like a physical vessel for all the information that you get at feedback time. So I've given you a bunch of examples. It's actually best if you make up your own. And if you do 2 coordinates, you could have a key or something else be the beacon. So you'd have 2 entirely separate beacons. And making up beacons of your own is the idea here. So that would be my suggestion to you. Okay. Great. 80% hit rate is terrific. Keep that up. Get that for the long term, and I'm going to bring you into APPI for sure. Go ahead, John. You were going to say something?
So I was just going to say there's 2 different terms for data from the wrong target. There's displacement and bleed through. I get displacement when I personally think one target's boring, and my mind will sometimes jump to the next target that may have some interesting element, and I'll describe that for the wrong target number. That's displacement. Bleed through happens when you have elements of both targets in the same session. And usually for me that's because I don't take enough time in between sessions in order to, I just want to mentally focus on one at a time. Mm-hmm. And if I get bleed through, it's because I still have some lingering thoughts about the other target. Maybe my session was too short and I didn't write everything down. My subconscious wanted me to write more down. Or I didn't take enough time in between. But beacons can also help because I use beacons as well. I hold one object in my hand for one session, and I hold a different object in my hand for the other session, and I match those up with my feedbacks. In between RV sessions, I like to take a shower and mentally I like to mentally tell myself that I'm washing away all the old data. Like, I'm going to come out of the shower a new man with just, blank, refreshed, like a newborn, and then start a new shower. Anything, it's a very mental process. How do you clear that data out? You might want to ask yourself that. How do I clear out the data that's still lingering? Is it because I didn't describe enough, or I find one target more interesting than the other? These are kind of subjective questions.
Right.
But
what I really like, though, is in every one of your comments and choices is you're taking total responsibility for it. And of course, that's exactly right. And I don't know, but with this process that you go through, one other thing which I do suggest is at some point you might actually ask your subconscious for why it's doing that, and it may give you an answer, or it may just say, because it's actually in both targets, sometimes, as you well know, there's overlap. I don't know what it'll say, but you might ask your subconscious. I am a great believer in when you get quiet. I actually do this at night before I go to bed. You get quiet and you can ask your subconscious all kinds of nice things, and you'll get answers sometimes, not all the time, but you can get answers. So this dialogue that we're developing in ARV through time is clearly a communication channel with the subconscious, so use it for other things as well, like answering questions like this.
That's an interesting comment. Earlier in your presentation, you had a sort of a slide that said the power of your subconscious mind, and that is actually the title of a book by Joseph Murphy, and in which he talks about sort of imagining a dialogue between yourself and your subconscious, and a great deal of modern psychology deals with that very topic. You're trying to, create more and more of a dialogue with that, and then this book's only 130 pages. It's actually a pretty famous book. I don't know if you want to.
Why don't you send me the title of it? I would like to refer to it.
It's just,
yeah.
That's it. And just one other thing to set your mind at ease. Displacement and bleed through are probably the main obstacles that all of us are battling constantly. So it's not that it's uncommon. We are constantly finding new mental techniques to deal with it, and new ways of communicating with our subconscious in order to facilitate it and make it more efficient. But it's a constant uphill battle. I think it's fun because we're learning more about ourselves. But don't feel like you're alone. We're every session I battle this issue. So
that's exactly right. Because imagine if they were to go away, we'd be pretty much at 100%, or we'd be passing. You'd miss the target. Okay, so then you'd pass, or you get a good match. Okay. Do give me the name of that book. I didn't quite get it. Maybe put it in the chat box or something like that.
Okay, it's the power of the subconscious mind.
Okay.
That's the name.
Okay, I'll write it. I'm writing it down here, so I've got it. Yeah.
By Joseph Murphy.
The Submind, Joseph Murphy. Okay. And it is a pretty famous book in the field of psychology.
Correct.
Okay. Over many, many, many years, everything that you're hearing me is put together from who knows how many sources. And yet, when I have somebody else that says the same thing, I always prefer to let them say it. You know what I mean? That's why I love to use quotes like this about responsibility and all that. Somehow I think it makes it more credible. But I only do that when things resonate with me. Anything else that we should talk about? Any other questions, comments? Okay. Excellent. This was excellent. I'll make sure the copy goes out to everybody else. And I thank you for, joining me here, and just keep precogging and build that communication channel. I need another one-liner for that. Anyway, all of you take care. It was a real pleasure being with you, and I will end this now.